I want to take a moment just to recognize our viewers worldwide, and especially the Netherlands. We appreciate each and every one of you. Remember, if you want to comment or ask questions, you just log on to theworldreport.org. Thank you very much. President-elect Trump has vowed to impose a 35% tariff on some imported goods. Is this a good idea, starting a trade war, or simply a new tax on consumers? The Donald isn't even inaugurated, and he's already saving jobs. First Ford, then Carrier, now the SoftBank of Japan, which I've never even heard of,
And Rexnord.
vows to invest $50 billion and create possibly 50,000 jobs. So the guy hasn't even been sworn into office yet. He hasn't even gone through the electoral college process yet, and he's already creating jobs and saving jobs and bringing business
He's
here.
become the de facto leader of this country.
And the world, I
And
would
by
say.
the way, the percentage of respect for him is getting up to 50%. So that's pretty good because he was supposed to be disliked intensely, just like Hillary.
Well, when you have an entire media conglomerate establishment
No, I understand.
against you,
Of
it's
course.
almost impossible to have positive numbers.
There's no question. When you say about certain products, what he's saying is if a company like Ford was going to move all their cars down to Mexico or Carrier,
Caterpillar.
and they were being encouraged by the government so that they could have cheap goods flowing back into this country. He's saying if he can't stop a company from taking, especially a conglomerate, from taking one of its divisions and moving them and making the same product overseas and then bringing it back. He says, if you do that, we're going to slap a 35% tariff on you. He's not
Oh, I
saying,
understand that.
but I don't want anybody to think that this is a dictatorial method of keeping goods out of the country.
But you agree with that? You think
I
it's a good
totally
idea?
agree with that because I agree with it because I'm sick of seeing that from the beginning of this century, 16 years ago, we've gone from 20 million manufacturers to 12 million manufacturers.
But doesn't that just mean that you're going to pay 35% more for the car
Not
or the product that was
necessarily.
made over there?
No, not if when there's a lot more people working and paying taxes. I think that look, what you're saying is, why don't we just get rid of manufacturing entirely and let China do all the steel, let India do all the coal, let other countries do what they can do best, and then just pour it in the United States, and we'll stop being a production country anymore. Why do you think we never had energy independence? Because we said, well, the Saudis are producing it like it's going out of style. Fracking was an accident because it's been around a long time, but it became much more cost effective, and suddenly we're starting to produce, which reduced the prices. See, it reduced the prices because of derivatives, because of the fact there was so much more available domestically. I'm saying
But there wasn't a 35% tax on the oil coming back into the country either.
no, but the price
From Saudi Arabia.
price took care of itself. The point is the consumer sector. What the point you're making makes sense to at this level. 68% of our gross domestic product of goods and services is based on the consumer. If you're saying all we're thinking about is how the consumer can get the cheapest goods, that's fine, but what if there's no jobs out there? Those consumers ain't going to have the money to spend anyway. We have to do something, and I don't know if 35% is the right amount, but I believe a lot of these companies are going to fall into line in such a way that it won't be necessary to do that. It's one of the ways that this 45th president is going to use to get America back into balance between production, distribution, and usage.
Now, there's a bank chief in Britain who declares that within the next 25 years, half of the workforce in Britain will be robotic. That tends to continue as we get into more...
Technology will be another factor. There's no question about it, but that'll only make it worse because you can't stop technology. Technology has gotten a basic acceleration that I could not have believed 20 years ago would have happened this quickly. It's not only in the communication area. Look at Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Is he going to put all the shopping centers out of business? I don't know. But the point is, you can't go against progress. These things are all very, very progressive. What you can do, however, is to engineer your basic direction to make sure that people don't get hurt and that you have the best kind of balance. I think what Trump is talking about is we can't afford to just be ho-hum about the fact that a lot of the production of this country is just leaving. You know,
So let me ask you a question. Was that a zero-sum game with Carrier? Did they get any? I mean, I know the answer to the question, but it's rhetorical. Did Carrier obviously got some incentives to stay? They didn't just do it out of the goodness of
taxes,
their heart.
yeah, that's many ways of doing. I think it started out when Ford announced that all their small cars are going to be made in Mexico. That gets back into NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Authority, which was signed off by President Clinton in 1993, which I was for. I didn't realize it was a one-way street, that there was going to be no taxes on goods coming in from Mexico, but there would continue to be taxes of goods coming from the United States into Mexico.
And what about dollars going back to Mexico? Why don't we put a tax on Western Union? Because every time I go to a Walmart, I see the lines going to Western Union, and I know where they're sending the money back to.
Well,
that's probably their number one import is American cash.
Well, Mexico is there's so much focus on illegals coming from Mexico and drug cartels. We are forgetting the fact that Mexico is one of the greatest success stories of economics in the world in the last 25 years. I mean, I used to have a company down in Mexico. It was a division of a group that I was in charge of. They were great workers. I mean, really smart. You know, I laugh about this. When we were forbidding using anything from Cuba, and we were making valves. Iron valves were very expensive, but very price attractive. So what happened was the guy from Mexico said, we get a lot of orders from Cuba. Is it okay if we have the Lunkenheimer name? I said, I don't know what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm admitting that because I saw how beautiful a job they did. The same kind of workers they had here as opposed to what we had here were, I would say, at least as good.
So if you take the corporate tax from 35%, let's say, down to 20%, now you've cut 15% right there. So if you're saving more money than that to move your company to Mexico, it still makes sense for the company to move to Mexico, even if they're paying that tariff coming back.
No, I think the whole thing, you're oversimplifying. I think what you're talking about is it makes no sense if a company is getting the benefit of a major reduction in the corporate tax to move it. I don't think here's what I think will happen. I think Trump is going to be such a powerful president that a lot of companies are going to come and try to do something. They'll work out a deal that they can still do fine, but the fact that they're not going to want to be on the bad side of Trump.
But they are going to get something. They're not going to do it just out of the goodness
always
of their
happens, of course.
Right. Which this current administration wouldn't even want to try and keep the jobs here.
Look, don't get me started on the current administration because I may say something in which I don't want to be popularly known.
Now, this is also interesting to me. Bank stocks are going crazy right now. And that has a lot to do with the Trump presidency, does it not?
Well, there's no question about it because they feel that people are going to be spending a lot of money. Look, you know what's happened since the first of this year? We have had fewer businesses, independent businesses, small businesses.
Fewer, not fewer.
That's your word, not mine.
Fewer businesses.
Yeah, right. There fewer have been formulated this year than any time in the last 25 years. And more businesses have gone out of business because of the Dodd-Frank situation, because the Environmental Protection Agency, I call it America's economic Gestapo.
That's probably the big one. the
Yeah.
EPA, because they don't need Congress, they don't need anybody to pass a regulation
right.
and to write a regulation
You know
and
what
to
I call
impose
them?
it into our
I
country.
call them our economic Gestapo. That means they can do whatever they want. And just the latest one is a pipeline in North Dakota.
Interesting you would bring that up, because that was our next piece right here. What do you make of what's going on there in North Dakota? The president has vowed he's not going to allow it to
Well,
happen.
first of all, that pipeline is pretty well finished except a quarter mile.
And isn't that the most efficient way to get oil transported
The only
anyway?
way, the only way. The other way is not only, it's dangerous and inefficient.
So if you really were a leftist that didn't have an agenda, you were being straight up honest with people, you'd have to say that
Yeah.
by rail is the worst possible way to
Yeah,
get
I
here.
know, but what you just, the beginning of your sentence was, but if you weren't elected, but
Correct.
he is.
If you're intellectually honest with
If
yourself.
you were saying that this president's objective was to make America a better country, he'd made a lot of different type of decisions.
Or even to transport oil the safest, most possible way, most efficient. They don't care about that either. They try to make it seem like that's what it's about. Oh, you're going to harm the groundwater. One tanker, one train derailment would do much more damage than
It
any
has.
pipeline.
It's
Yes.
the facts are there, but again, propaganda, media, distortion of communication. I've lived with that many years of my life. It's very powerful. You know, propaganda is probably the most underrated communications capability that people understand. I understand it because I've lived it all my life. I enjoy it. I enjoy the history of it, and I enjoy being a communicator because of it.
And you also have to look at the motivating factors. Warren Buffett owns the railways. He doesn't want you
Of
shipping
course.
it any other way. He's a buddy with the administration.
Of course.
There's your crony capitalism right there.
You
The
answered-
great thing about Trump, he doesn't owe anybody anything. He doesn't need to make anyone's wife ambassador to anywhere. He doesn't have to pay back a donor. He doesn't have any lobbyists to take care of. He's all on his
He was
own.
a small town guy in Omaha, Nebraska.
You're talking about Warren.
Pardon me?
You're talking about Buffett now.
Yeah, I'm talking about Warren Buffett. But he found out that by investing little by little by little, he was taking over companies. I mean, look at Heinz Foods. What does Kraft and Heinz Foods have to do with the railway? I mean, he's all over the place.
Yeah.
And well, you know what the ultimate irony is? His company has had one of the greatest percentage profit positives since Trump was elected.